meeting of Council at 2 p.m. on Wednesday, the 27th of January 2021. Can I please remind you all to switch your phones to silent for the duration of the meeting? In addition, can I refer you all to the protocols for remote meetings, which has previously been circulated? Namely, your microphone should be switched to silent unless you're speaking. The Democratic Service Officer will take a roll call at the start of the meeting of all members and officers present. Should you wish to ask a question or make a comment, please can you indicate either via the chat function or by raising your electronic hand via Teams. I will assume that you've all read the paperwork before us today prior to the meeting. When speaking, please can you also introduce yourself. I'm Councillor Scott Jones, the Mayor of Neath Talbot, and I will now hand over to Jane from Democratic Services to take the roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Aubrey.
Present.
Councillor Bamsey.
Present.
Councillor Causey.
Present.
Councillor Clark.
Present.
Councillor Clement Williams.
Present.
Councillor Crowley.
Present.
Councillor Arthur Davis. Councillor Nicola Davis.
Present.
Councillor Oliver Davis.
Present.
Councillor Ros Davis.
Presennol. Present.
Councillor Carlin Edwards.
Present.
Councillor Jamie Evans. Councillor Freegard.
Present.
Councillor Galsworthy.
Present.
Councillor Griffiths.
Present.
Councillor Hale.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Harris. Apologies received from Councillor Harvey. Councillor Hunt. Nigel Hunt. Councillor Steve Hunt.
I'm here, Jane.
Councillor Hurley.
Present, thank you.
Councillor James. Chris James.
Present.
Councillor Hugh James.
I'm here, Jane.
Councillor Jones.
Present.
Councillor Doreen Jones. Councillor Thank you. Councillor Hugh Jones. Councillor Hugh Jones. Councillor Jane Jones.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Leanne Jones.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Rob Jones.
Yes, I'm here, Jane.
Councillor Scott Jones, Mr. Mayor, yes. Councillor Keogh.
Present.
Councillor Noyle.
Yes, I'm here, thanks.
Councillor Latham.
Yeah, present, Jane.
Councillor Dean Lewis. Councillor Alan Llewellyn.
Yes, Jane, I do.
Councillor Lockyer.
Present, Jane.
Councillor McGrath.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Miller. John Miller.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Sandra Miller.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Misen.
Present all here, Jane.
Councillor Del Morgan.
Yeah, present all.
Councillor Paddison.
Present.
Councillor Penry.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Peters. Councillor Rebecca Phillips.
Present. Present all.
Councillor Prothero.
Present, thanks, Jane.
Councillor Purcell.
Present.
Councillor Percy.
Present.
Councillor Harman.
Present.
Councillor Peter Rees.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Renkes.
Present.
Councillor Reynolds.
Present.
Councillor AJ Richards. Anthony Richards.
Present all present, Jane.
Councillor Peter Richards.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Martia Spooner. Councillor Anthony Taylor.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Rachel Taylor.
Present.
Councillor John Warman. I have seen you, Councillor Warman. Councillor Whitelock.
Present, thank you, Jane.
Councillor Chris Williams.
Present, thank you, Jane.
Councillor Wingrave.
Present. Thank you, Jane.
Councillor Wood.
Present.
Councillor Woolcock.
Present all, Mr. Mayor.
I will now go on to officers. Karen Jones.
Present, Jane.
Howell Jenkins. Howell. Nicola
present.
Thank you. Nicola P.S.
Present, Jane.
Andrew Jarrett.
Present.
Aled Evans.
Present.
Craig Griffiths.
Present, Jane.
Hugh Jones. Rhian Heaton.
Present.
Stacey Curran.
Present.
Hugh Jones. Are there any names that I have missed from the roll call who are participating in the meeting today? I can see Sheena Rees.
Hi, Jane. Yes, I'm present.
Is there anyone else in the office I've missed? I think that's it, Mr. Mayor. That's the roll call completed.
Okay, thanks very much, Jane. Okay, members, we'll therefore move to agenda item 1, Mayor's announcement. In view of the 100,000 deaths recorded yesterday as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, as a mark of respect, can I please ask Council to observe a minute's silence, please? Thank you, members. Further announcements following the flooding in Skewen last week. I'm sure that members will join me in thanking our staff and those of the partner agencies for their hard work. Our thoughts are with those who are affected. I know that the leader will be giving Council an update under urgent items later today, further on in the agenda. On an happier note, I'm pleased to announce that 2 recipients were medalists of the Order of British Empire in the New Year Honours List from Neath. Robert Malcolm Davis, Special Constable of South Wales Police for voluntary services to policing in Neath, and Vicky Broyd, Head of Long-Term Care, Howell Dar University Health Board for services to the National Health Service Wales during COVID-19. Members, we'll move on now to agenda item 2, members' interests. Can I ask if there are any interests to declare? Please can you indicate by raising your electronic hand via Teams or indicate via the chat function, and when called, please state details. The Democratic Service Officer will then forward an electronic version of the Declaration of Interest form to you to complete and to email back to the relevant officer. So can I ask if there's any declaration of interest, please?
I can't see any indications, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Jane. Okay, therefore, we'll move on to agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting of Council. Can I refer members to the minutes of the previous meeting of Council held on the 2nd and 23rd of December? Before I move confirmation of their accuracy, are there any comments on the accuracy of the minutes, please?
I can't see any, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Jane.
Oh, Councillor Peter Rees had his hand up.
Councillor Peter Rees.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I noticed my name isn't on the list of attendees. I've checked my diary and I was present at that meeting on the 2nd of December, Mr. Mayor.
I will add that, Mr. Mayor, to today's meeting.
Thanks very much, Councillor Rees. Thank you, Jane. Okay, therefore, I'll now move confirmation of the accuracy of the minutes. Can I please have a seconder?
I second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Can I advise that if you do not indicate to the contrary, it'll be assumed that you are in favour of the recommendation. Jane will now confirm with each member who's indicated whether they're against or wish to abstain, please.
There's no indications, Mr. Mayor, so that's fine.
Thanks very much, Jane. Okay, therefore, we'll move on to agenda item 4, Council Tax Reduction Scheme 2021 to 2022. Can I now call upon the Cabinet Member, Councillor Clement Williams, Cabinet Member for Finance, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report sets out the proposed Council Tax Reduction Scheme for 2021-22, which needs to be adopted by Council by the 31st of January 2021. It also makes proposals relating to discretionary areas within the proposed scheme. The scheme is based on the Welsh Government's national framework, which helps to avoid a postcode lottery and provides up to 100% support. The scheme's excuse me. The scheme provides council tax support to approximately 17,500 households within the county borough. Around 12,500 receive full support and pay no council tax. The remaining 5,000 households receive partial support to pay for the council tax. The current council tax reduction scheme ends on the 31st of March 2021, and a new scheme must be adopted for the 1st of April 2021. The scheme before Council today will continue on the same basis as previous years, with no changes proposed to eligibility criteria. This scheme provides support with their council tax to holders within our county borough who need it the most, especially during these difficult and uncertain times. Members of Council should be aware that since the start of the coronavirus pandemic, the number of households claiming council tax support has risen by over 500, and the scheme is expected to cost approximately £19.7 million in 2021-22. The recommendations of the report are set out on pages 18 and 19 of your papers, and I would ask Council to approve these recommendations and adopt this scheme from April 2021. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Cabinet Member. Can I ask members if they have any questions or comments, please? If so, please can you raise your electronic hand? I'll call upon Councillor Steve Hunt first, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I welcome this report today and the introduction by the Cabinet Member for Finance. Can I just ask as well, within the report, it highlighted the uncertainty with the coronavirus and the possible for future claims is built into the system, not necessarily this report, but I know the Cabinet members working extremely hard with the relevant officers in the Welsh Assembly Government. But I just wondered that we don't know the actual numbers until coronavirus or COVID has really settled. We had the announcement at the beginning of the loss of life, which I'm sure we all supported the minute silence, and it's a difficult time for families. But I just wondered, within this report, what is Howell Jenkins, our Cabinet Member, doing to protect the council taxpayer going forward and those who can claim further as and when they need to, with information, as and when they get it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Can I call on the relevant Cabinet Member, please? So, sorry, your microphone is muted, Councillor Clement.
Always one, isn't it? Me. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure I will, if he needs to, will come in after me. What I would say is that we've had full support on any income lost, first of all, from council tax support for people that are now unable to pay, who could have paid in the past or would have paid if their circumstances hadn't changed. We do put in, if you like, a bill every quarter for income lost, and we have had that support from Welsh Government. We've also put in an extra £500,000 into this year's scheme to support the extra people that we anticipate will need that extra support from Council this year. And I have no doubt that moving forward, we will continue to work hand in hand with Welsh Government moving forward into the next financial year. I don't know if Hywel would like to add to that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Clement. Can I ask the Director of Finance, please, if there's anything that he wishes to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I confirm the details provided by Councillor Clement Williams. We've already been reimbursed by Welsh Government the 6 months worth of additional costs attached to the council tax reduction scheme. They have informed us as well that they are going to refund the council for the third quarter, just ended in December. And they have the details there, and they will also be doing an estimate of the value for this last quarter to the end of March. So I am expecting the full cost to be reimbursed this year. And as Councillor Clement Williams said, for next year, we have built in an additional £500,000 of support. We hope that during recovery, there will be more people be able to go back to work, etc., and that additional sum hopefully will be enough. But I'm sure it will be something that will be monitored by us and the Welsh Government as we go through the 2021-22 financial year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. I haven't seen any further indication from members in terms of any further questions or comments. Therefore, can I refer members to the recommendation on page 18 of the report? Can I firstly ask for a proposer, please?
I move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Can I ask for a seconder, please?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Can I advise members that if you do not indicate to the contrary, it'll be assumed that you're in favour of the recommendation. Jane, if you could kindly confirm, please.
Yeah, I can see no indications, Mr. Mayor, so that recommendation is approved.
Thanks very much, Jane. Okay, therefore we'll move on to agenda item 5, Capital Programme Monitoring Report. I'm pleased to advise Council that this report was commended to Council by the Cabinet on the 13th of January. Therefore, can I now call upon the Cabinet Member, Councillor Clement Williams, to introduce the report, please?
Make sure I unmute this time, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. This report, which is in front of you today, has been approved by Cabinet and Cabinet Scrutiny Committee. The report seeks Council approval for a capital programme totalling £70.682 million. This is a significant investment in a wide variety of projects across the county borough, which is being delivered despite the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. These include progression of the Council's Band B 21st Century Schools in Cefn Saeson, Abbey Primary and Ysgol Gymraeg Ystalyfera. Investment in a flood and coastal risk prevention project at Aberavon Seafront. County Borough regeneration, including the continuation of the Neath Town Centre redevelopment, commencement of works on the Neath Transport Hub, development works on the former Crown Building, redevelopment works on the former Plaza Cinema in Port Talbot, along with the Harbourside Infrastructure Project. A further investment of the £3 million into disabled facilities grants to assist people to live at home together, with an investment of £3 million in schools capital maintenance and highways and engineering maintenance improvements. The recommendations are shown on page 31 of today's paper, and I would ask Council to approve these. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks very much. Can I ask members if they have any questions or comments to the Cabinet Member on a report, please? Councillor Steve Hunt.
Sorry, Chair, I couldn't get my Miss Mayor. Sorry, I couldn't get my mic off then. Yeah, I always make a comment on the capital programme papers monitoring report today. It's always an excellent one. It's something that we should all be happy with, and like I would be today, and fully supportive of it. I just wanted to ask a question on where does, ask the cabinet member, sorry, Mr. Mayor, where with the capital programs, obviously they're ongoing improvements and huge investments, which I welcome, as I said. Given the circumstances we're in, and the staffing levels and everything else, how do we keep on track with delivering? Is there a program of deliverance within the projects? Because they could sit there, the money's there for them. I just wonder timescales and so forth. As I said, it's a fantastic report. The council should be very proud of the capital programme that we embark on every year. But I just wondered, there's a lot of projects within the report. I just wondered, is there any timescales, time frames that these are to be completed by, or as the coronavirus and other aspects of circumstances going to put these back in a significant way? That's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Can I call on the Cabinet Member, Councillor Williams, to respond, followed then by the Director of Finance, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Hunt, for your question. The capital programme, as you are aware, I know you know how the budget works, Councillor Hunt. The capital programme, for any people listening into the meeting, is separate monies that is provided that have to be spent on capital budgets. I know some councils through Wales have put on hold some of these projects, but due to the businesses being hit by coronavirus and wanting to encourage our local community to continue to thrive as much as we possibly can, I'm not suggesting at all that there haven't been hiccups. We have tried to continue the programme in a safe way. I'm sure my director, Mr. Jenkins, would add on to, because these things are fluid, I'm sure he would add some extra meat to the bones of my reply for you, Councillor Hunt, as to what the timescales are. I hope that answers your question so far, but after Howell has spoken, if there's any issues, you can always come back to us. Thank you. Howell.
Thank you, Cabinet Member. Director of Finance, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As members can see, the table on the page, bottom of page 34, shows that as at the end of December, we had already paid out £37.5 million against the £70 million proposed updated budget now for this year. So we're more than halfway through the year in terms of making the payments. There's a lot of costs that, because we've got a year end of 31st of March, there will be a catch up in terms of the payments that will happen now between now and the end of March. And of course, there will be works that will be carried out in March that we will be saying these are the value of those works undertaken. So we are on track to delivering the £70 million, and the second column that is reflected in the table from page 32 through to 34. Councillor Hunt is right in saying it is managed. There is a capital programme steering group that actually consists of senior officers across the council who report in to say this is the delivery timetable for each and every project and programme. And they monitor that then on a monthly basis to ensure that we're on track, or whether there needs to be some slight amendments to the programme to ensure that overall it is delivered hopefully in the best timely way that the council can. But I'm sure that as Councillor Hunt and Councillor Clement Williams stated, a delivery of £37.5 million to date, with a further £35 million plus likely to happen between now and year end, is a really effective work during this COVID pandemic.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. I've received no further indication from members. Therefore, can I refer members to the recommendation on page 31 of the report? Can I please ask for a proposer?
I move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Can I advise members that if they do not indicate to the contrary, it'll be assumed that they are in favour of these recommendations. Jane, can I kindly ask that you confirm?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm just looking and I see no indication, so the recommendations have been approved.
Thank you, Jane. Okay, we'll therefore move on to agenda item 6, Strategic Equalities Plan 2020 to 2024. Can I now call upon the relevant Cabinet Member, Councillor Doreen Jones, Cabinet Member for Corporate Services and Equality, to introduce this report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Strategic Equality Plan, including our equality objectives, was adopted by Council in September 2020. As you will remember, the equality objectives had been revised to ensure they remained appropriate in light of the extraordinary circumstances our communities have experienced since March last year. The actions themselves required further review, and following a period of reflection and activity over recent months, the actions have been revised to fully ensure we fully address the impact of these events on our local communities. The involvement of our communities, most notably our Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities, has been invaluable in helping identify actions that not only help to address the impacts of COVID-19, but also the wider inequalities faced by these communities. This has not been a task and finish exercise, and it has not been a one-way conversation. It is an ongoing dialogue which I hope will continue to be mutually beneficial. These last few months have been a sharp learning curve. For us as a council, being made aware that we are not quite as enlightened as we would like to think, realising that however good our intentions and however understanding we are, we don't know everything, and actually needing to and being willing to listen and learn. For our Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities, being more aware than ever that they are able to shape and influence policy, being enabled to use their voice and to be a force to initiate change. The identification of additional actions with the involvement of our workforce and Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities is not the end of the story. And to paraphrase Nelson Mandela, it is just a first step on the long way to equality. Inequality is not one-dimensional, and as such requires a fluid approach to address its many faces. Consequently, we are mindful that the actions presented here today are, like our ever-changing society and circumstances, not set in stone. The actions, like ourselves, must remain relevant and appropriate to the needs of our communities, and so will be kept under review in association with our various communities to ensure that we fully meet our objectives. The recommendations on page 36, and I commend the actions to meet our equality objectives through the Council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Cabinet Member. I have received an indication to speak from Councillor Richards, so I call upon Councillor Richards, please. Councillor Anthony Richards.
Diolch yn fawr, Mr Mayor, and thank you to the Cabinet Member for her report. Just a couple of questions that I have. So on page 37, point 20, it mentions there is a removal of reference to 0-hour contracts and the inclusion of casual and temporary contracts. Can the Cabinet Member or the officers can they confirm whether this council will no longer be employing people on 0-hour contracts, or is it that the term 0-hour contracts will now go under the several different contract types used by the council and under the heading of casual and temporary contracts? I do have some further questions, but if you could take that one first, please.
I think I'll hand over to Mrs. Sheena Rees to answer that question, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Cabinet Member. Mrs. Sheena Rees, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Yes, Councillor Richards, in answer to your question, the reason that we changed it from 0 hours to temporary and casual is because this council doesn't employ any members of staff under what's called a 0 hours contract. We do employ members of staff under casual and temporary contracts. About 2 years ago, we agreed a protocol with our trade unions in relation to the employment of people under casual and temporary contracts, and that's something that we keep under review with them. So that's why we've changed it to better reflect the position within this council. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. I just wanted that point of clarity because I'm aware that it can come under 0-hour contracts can come under that heading as well. So just to confirm, as an authority, we will be under no obligation to provide work, and the individual is also free to refuse any work without the fear of facing any disciplinary or jeopardising any future job opportunities, because under the 0-hour contracts, obviously that's not the case. So just to confirm that that would be the case.
Yes, I absolutely confirm that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, and that's great to hear, because as we can all appreciate, it's really important that our staff are valued properly and protected, because as we all know, it's these staff members that keep our local services functioning, and to give them the proper rights is far better than doing it under the 0-hour contract. So thanks for confirming that.
Thank you, Councillor Richards. Councillor Saif Rahman, followed then by Councillor Steve Hunt, please. So,
thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Cabinet Member, for the report. My question is in relation to diversifying the workforce within the local authority. Are there any work being taken to make sure the council is fair and given the equal opportunity to the BAME communities in terms of accessing employment within the local authority? And in terms of percentage currently of BAME employee within the local authority, does that reflect on the communities that live in East Port Talbot? Thank you.
Can I come in, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, we have had a conversation, and there are ongoing conversations with all members. We did have a roundtable discussion with all the different ethnic communities that are employed at the moment to get a better. That's why I said it's not set in stone. It's something that's the ongoing conversation, and that's happening all the time. So to make us aware of our responsibilities, because it is overlooked. We just assume that everybody knows what's going on, and they don't altogether. But this is one of the things that is ongoing all the time. I can see the cabinet member, the office is responsible.
Thank you. Mrs. Rees, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, just to add, Mr. Mayor, that what we've committed to developing is a BAME Equality and Diversity Action Plan, because I think we recognise that there is more work that can be done. When we had the conversation with our workforce, they fed back to us, for instance, that the senior management team within the council isn't reflective of our local community. We know there are things that could better reflect our community. There are a lot of actions that we could undertake. So we have committed to putting a plan in place to take that forward into the next year. We are intending to draw on the lessons because we've had a very successful gender equality action plan. So that has shown us what can be done if you break a big problem down into tangible and achievable objectives. So that's how we plan to approach it. We'll be doing it with the support of the Equality and Community Cohesion Group, and we also intend to set up a BAME Employee Forum to help support us with this action plan.
Thank you, Mrs. Rees. Now going to call upon Councillor Steve Hunt, followed by Councillor Paddison, followed by Councillor Purcell. So, Councillor Steve Hunt, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We can't underestimate the importance of our strategic equalities plan, and I welcome this report today. I thank the Cabinet member for presenting it. On page 39, I just wanted to ask again, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, if I keep on going back to where we are with the coronavirus and COVID-19. We all know that this has had reputable an effect on violence against women, domestic abuse and other violence within the homes, with the figures that were released over Christmas and continue to be released. On page 39, when they mentioned in the consultation with the violence against women, it's not been subject to an external consultation. Now, while I understand that externally has been fed into where you get your plans from, I only want to emphasise, and I know with Karen Jones, who was leading on this prior to being our Chief Executive, probably still has a very hands-on approach. Excellent work by this authority. I understand that and fully support that as the Chair of Community Safety and Public Protection Scrutiny. But I just really want to know where or how the impact of COVID has been seen in the excellent work that we're doing, because if there is going to be a detrimental effect to the work that we really need to do to get the report right, to draw down on what needs to happen to prevent or have an impact at home, then I want to have a better understanding. This is my view, Mr. Mayor, but I want a better understanding of what we are doing outside with all our partners and agencies to tackle this serious problem. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Can I ask Mrs. Rees to respond?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm afraid that that's not a question that I'm in a position to respond to. Councillor Hunt, is that something I could possibly...
Mr. Mayor, I think the Chief Exec wants to respond. She's got her hand up.
Oh, great. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. Mrs. Jones, Chief Executive, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I may not have caught everything you said, Councillor Hunt, because you were breaking up a little bit there when you were asking the question. But what I can say to you is a number of months ago, we commissioned something called a community impact assessment to understand how the COVID pandemic is affecting the different parts of our communities. And we know from the early work that we've done is it is disproportionately affecting some people in our communities compared with others. So, for example, the loss of jobs is disproportionately impacted on young people and on women. And we also know from the health impacts that have been reported, there's been disproportionate impacts on the BAME communities as well. So what we are doing is we're developing that community impact assessment and updating it as we are going forward. We're using that information to inform our current priorities while we are still in response, but we are looking then to develop some further work as we move into recovery. So as Councillor Jones said right at the beginning of the item, this action plan isn't something that's cast in concrete. I think as the situation evolves and we understand more about the way in which people are being affected by this, we would be expecting to come back to update and further develop the action plan. And if you want to see the community impact assessment in its current form, there's absolutely no problem in you receiving a copy of that.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Can I now call upon Councillor Paddison, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no problem in following the recommendations on this report. It's a very pleasing report. I'm very proud of our council to have produced it for the council today. What I would say is I know the Cabinet member is exactly right. It is not set in stone. It is not something that is just voted upon once. And I have asked questions in the past in scrutiny about reducing unconscious bias, and I have had words with Mrs. Sheena Rees, and who has assured me that these things are in the process of doing. It is a difficult year, and I am really proud that that work will continue on, and that we will have a reduction in unconscious bias for applications for work in this council going forward. It may not be there yet, but we are going to get there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Can I now call upon Councillor Purcell, please?
Thank you very much. I'm looking at page 46. Yeah, hang on a second. Yeah, page 46. And it's talking about how Neath Talbot has the third largest Gypsy and travel community in Wales, and that there are 2 authorised Gypsy traveller caravan sites in the county borough. And I just wanted to ask 2 questions. Firstly, in the BAME groups, are the Gypsies and Travellers represented as an ethnic group within those consultations? And secondly, although I welcome the fact that we do have these 2 traveller caravan sites, do we have any facilities for when Gypsy travellers arrive on our wards, as happened recently with me, for very good reasons? They actually had a relative who was in hospital in Singleton and needed to stay close by. I just wondered if we had any provision of literally where to put them if they arrive unexpectedly. Thank you.
Cabinet Member, would you like to respond, or would you like me to refer the question through to the Chief Executive?
I think it needs to go to the Chief Executive, that one, because I'm not aware that we've got anything with well, South is Councillor Arman is also on the in charge of BME committee as well. But I think I'll hand over to the Chief Executive, I think, on that one.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I will, without wanting to play a game of pass the parcel here, bring in my colleague Rhian Heaton maybe as well, who can answer some of the technical detail. But just to give Council an assurance, first of all, we've got a range of ways in which we engage with the Gypsy traveller community, and that's across a whole range of different service areas, be it social services, education, or in terms of our Environment Directorate, in terms of the housing needs and the management of the sites. So I think you can have an assurance that there's active engagement with the Gypsy traveller community, and certainly when the strategic equality plan is compiled, we involve the officers that have got those links with the community in the way in which we develop the objectives and we develop our priorities. But specifically on the detail of it, I just wonder, Rhian, whether you want to add anything specifically around the other elements of the question that has been posed.
Thank you. In respect of provision of accommodation when Gypsy travellers come on a transient basis, I'm sorry, I'm not aware of anything that we actually have in place, but I can certainly find that out. I'm only aware of the actual sites that we have, and I will certainly get back to members in respect of that when I find that information out. I can only just confirm what the Chief Executive has actually said regarding engagement. It is via those mechanisms that we do engage with our various communities, and particularly with the Gypsy traveller community. Some of the information that we've gathered has been local, in order the research papers, etc., and information locally, in order to develop the equality objectives and, of course, any actions that have come out of it.
Thank you, Rhian. Yes, if you could kindly respond to the member directly outside of today's meeting, that would be appreciated. I'm now going to call upon the Director of Environment, Mrs. Pearce, followed by the Leader of Council. Mrs. Pearce, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in terms of the provision of accommodation for Gypsy and travellers, we do not have a transit site, which is the terminology used for the Gypsy and traveller community who are not necessarily based within Neath Talbot. We do not have a transit site within Neath Talbot. There are transit sites in neighbouring authorities, and there is no expectation under the legislation for all authorities to have transit sites. As was mentioned earlier, we do have 2 authorised sites where there is accommodation available for the Gypsy and Traveller community, and we are required under the legislation to periodically, and I'm not going to quote how often we have to do it because I don't want to make a mistake because I'm not 100% clear, but we have to periodically undertake a Gypsy and Traveller accommodation needs assessment. So we have to identify how many Gypsy and Traveller residents we have in our residing in our authority on a permanent basis, and we have to project what the accommodation needs of their growing families will be over the longer term, and we have to make provision then within our local development plan for that growing community. So we have to do that by law, and we do that. We have a Gypsy and Traveller assessment adopted by this authority. We're about to review it. Because of COVID, we have been delayed in the review of that document, and that has been acknowledged and agreed by Welsh Government. We're not the only authority who have been delayed, but that information or that assessment will be undertaken, and that will inform the LDP review as it goes forward. So I'm hoping that will give you the information that you were requesting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Director. Can I call upon the Leader of Council, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just to top up what's been said already. I want to emphasise the fact that we are one of the very few authorities throughout the whole of Wales that has actually got not 1 but 2 authorised Gypsy encampments, and very often we get inundated with traveller families from outside the area for the same reason that you just explained, Councillor Purcell. And if you think about it, they came into our area when someone was in Morriston Hospital, which is in Swansea. We do accommodate. I do believe that the accommodation survey has to take place every 5 years. I took part in it myself as one of the local members that has an authorised site. It's very comprehensive, it's very detailed, and it does feed into Welsh Government, and then we have to take cognizance of that within our LDP. So I'm pleased to say, I'm proud to say, that we are fully engaged with our Gypsy Traveller community on both sites in Margam and in Briton Ferry, and we are one of the very few councils that actually undertake this role and manage these 2 sites. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. Members have received no further indication. Therefore, can I refer members to the recommendation on page 39 of the report? Therefore, can I ask for a proposer, please?
I move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And a seconder, please.
I'll second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, it'll be assumed that you're in favour of the recommendation. Can I now call upon Jane to confirm that this is the case, please?
You're on mute, Jane.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I can confirm there's no indications to the contrary, so the recommendations have been approved.
Great, thanks very much, Jane. Okay, agenda item 7, appointment of a standing deputy returning officer. Can I now call upon the Chief Executive, Mrs. Karen Jones, to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and just very briefly, as I've taken on the returning officer role in my new position, we are being asked by the Electoral Commission to confirm who our nomination would be for deputy returning officer. So you'll see that I'm proposing that that be Mr. Rhys George, who, as you know, is a very experienced elections professional, and I hope the council will give it its full support this afternoon.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Can I ask if there's any questions or observations from members, please?
Oops, God, it's gone away.
No. Okay.
I can't see any, Mr. Mayor.
No problem, thank you. Can I now refer members to recommendation on page 101 of the report, and therefore can I ask for a proposer, please?
I move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And a seconder, please.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Can I advise members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, it'll be assumed again that you are in favour of the recommendation. Jane, can you confirm that this is the case, please?
I can see no indications to the contrary, so the recommendation has been approved.
Thank you, Jane. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 8, Mayoral Arrangements, can I now call upon the Head of Legal Services, Mr. Craig Griffiths, to introduce the report, please.
Indeed, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a report before members today to confirm our mayoral arrangements now for our next civic year. Our AGM will be taking place now in the middle of March, and so approval is asked today for Council to nominate officially Councillor John Warman as Mayor and Councillor Del Morgan as Deputy Mayor for our next civic year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Griffiths. Can I therefore call upon, I've had an indication, Councillor Alan Llewellyn, please.
Sorry, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And apologies, I've had connection issues this afternoon. I haven't been able to contribute so far, but I've agreed with all the decisions that have been taken. I just wanted, I'm sure somebody will formally propose, Mr. Mayor, but I just wanted to indicate once again, I'm sure that we all wish to express our appreciation to yourself for continuing to take the role during this very, very difficult time. It's extended beyond when you would have expected to complete your mayoral year, and it's been in the most difficult circumstances of steering the authority through this difficult period, and I'm sure that we will all give our support. I'm sure that we appreciate also for Councillor Warman and Councillor Del Morgan their patience and the support that they've given to you in the background during this period. So I'm sure there will be a formal proposal, but I would be happy to support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Llewellyn, and again, thanks very much for your kind words, and to all members as well for your support. And I'm sure I'll speak further about that and in more detail in forthcoming council meetings. I haven't received any further indications from members, so can I therefore refer members to recommendation on page 104 of the report, and can I ask for a proposer, please?
I move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And a seconder, please.
Yeah, second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Members, can I advise, if you do not indicate to the contrary, it'll be assumed that you are in favour of the recommendation. Can I now ask Jane to confirm that being the case, please?
I can confirm, Mr. Mayor, that there's no indications to the contrary, so the recommendation has been approved.
Thanks very much, Jane. Therefore, we'll move on to agenda item 9, minutes of the meetings of Cabinet. These Cabinet decision records from the 20th of November 2019 to the 10th of December 2020 are for members' information only. Can I now move on to agenda item 10, notice of motion? I can confirm that I've received no notice of motions. Therefore, I'll move on to agenda item 11. Any questions under Rule 9.2? I can confirm that no questions under 9.2 has been received. Therefore, can I move on to agenda item 12, urgent item? And can I invite the Leader of Council, Councillor Rob Jones, to address the Council with an update on COVID-19 and the current situation with regards to flooding in Skewen. Calling upon the Leader of Council, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Deputy Mayor had his hand up then. I don't know if you wish to inquire before I give my reports.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Warman, please.
I don't think he does. His hand is not there anymore, Mr. Mayor.
No problem. Thank you, Jane. Leader, handing back over to yourself.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got two quite comprehensive reports, Council, so bear with me. I'll try to give you as much details as possible. I'll start with the COVID report, and if it's all right with you, Mr. Mayor, I'll pause after that in case there are questions. So if I put into context that the rate of cases is measured by per 100,000 population, it has further reduced. On the 14th of January, the rate was recorded at, excuse me, 363.5. The positivity rate was recorded at 20.2. As of the 24th of January, the rates had reduced to 23.5 per 100,000 with a positivity rate of 17.2. The current levels compare with those seen at the time of the last fire break, and as of today, our 100,000 rate is 187.7 with a positivity rate of 15.1. There are three variants of concern within the UK, the Kent variant, the South African variant, and the Brazilian variant. And as recently as reported today, Wales has seen 10 cases of the South African variant registered in our country. The Kent variant is now responsible for 50% of all cases being tested in Wales. These variants are considered to be more transmissible, and there is some emerging evidence that the Kent variant may have a slightly higher mortality rate. To put that into context, under the mortality rate that they are measuring, that's measured at 10 per 1,000 deaths, or sorry, 10 per 1,000 cases, but with a slightly higher rate of 13, up to 13 per 1,000 cases. There is concern also that the Brazilian and South African variants may blunt the effectiveness of the vaccines, but work is still ongoing. Consequently, the UK government has introduced further travel restrictions, particularly international travel, with new quarantine arrangements that are being in process and introduced to tighten our border control. Although a number of cases is showing improvement, the health and social care remains under severe strain. Our numbers are down, but let's remember, we cannot be complacent and we must continue to comply with the regulations. Moving to TTP, the number of people presenting for testing is considerably lower than seen before the Christmas break. The reasons for this are unclear, and testing capacity has been increased, so there is concern that people may not be inclined to present for testing. Public communications has increased to encourage people to come forward where they have symptoms, no matter how mild. Without these people presenting for testing, it is difficult to get a clear picture of how the disease is behaving amongst our communities. There are no present concerns about the performance within contact tracing service. There are concerns about additional modes of testing that are being introduced, for examples in our universities, and there are discussions with Welsh Government about testing strategies. Tata is piloting a test to enable this strategy, and if these additional modes are not fully integrated into the wider TTP arrangements, there is a risk that the system will be undermined, and this issue has also been flagged with Welsh Government. Vaccinations, the progress on the rollout of the vaccination programme is receiving a very high profile. As of 7 p.m. last night, the current numbers of vaccinations recorded across the Swansea Bay Health Board are 37,236. But I do stress that is caveated for the simple reason there is a data delay from the GP surgeries that are administering the vaccination. So we're also waiting for a concise breakdown of the groups that are included in these figures to have a clearer picture of progress on our vaccination scheme in order for the top 4 priority groups to have been hit with their targets by the 14th of February 2021. There is growing pressure from a number of quarters for other populations in our communities to be included on the priority lists. But we are following the recommendation of the JCVI, that's the Joint Committee for Vaccination and Immunisation. And as we understand it today, no further considerations will be given until phase 2, that is after the current priority groups have been vaccinated. With that, there is some concerns that the definitions of who is captured in the social care workforce has been amended by Welsh Government, which would exclude children's social care workforce. We are still awaiting to put forward eligible staff from our special schools, with the policy decision on who would be included still not settled, despite Welsh Government announcing that they would be included several weeks ago. Service pressures and issues are the biggest risks, and our areas continues to be adult social care. We continue to see a number of care homes at risk, and are also now seeing an increased number of clusters in domiciliary care. Hot off the press, literally 15 minutes ago, England have just approved that they will not open their schools until after half term. But this may go on to be at least the 8th of March, as there is not enough data to decide when lockdown will end under England. As far as our schools are concerned, this matter, I'm sure, will be taken under advisement in relation to Welsh Government and the data available for them to make a decision. But within our schools, remote learning continues for 95% of the pupil population, and we are delivering one-to-one devices for Key Stage 3 pupils and students. All staff members who need a device have received one to allow them to deliver remote learning. The Minister for Education announced last week that the end-of-year qualifications will be awarded based on centre assessment grades, but concerns remain over the process as a significant minority of Key Stage 4 pupils are not engaging with remote provision, and the evidence-based needs to make accurate assessments could be compromised. But schools are seeking to resolve these challenges. Our schools improvement officers are monitoring pupils' engagement with learning, and most recent data shows that whilst the number are increasing, there continues to be an inconsistent picture with the percentage of pupils involved in remote learning that does range from 45% to almost 100%. We do, however, continue to support schools to overcome issues and to secure a consistently high rate of engagement. ADU, the Association of Directors throughout Wales, is in discussion with Welsh Government on identifying options regarding return of pupils to on-site learning. The current advice is that we should prioritise the return for those who find home learning most limited, i.e. those in early year groups and those with ALN. No decision has been made, and Welsh Government is continuing to consider how we reopen our schools and how that will be facilitated. The vaccination of school-based staff who deliver intimate care is another area of concern, and we have yet to receive a definition of what is intimate care from Welsh Government, and there is an inconsistent picture across Wales. A number of local authorities and health boards have already vaccinated school-based staff and other staff groups based on the local interpretation, and others such as MPT are awaiting guidelines from Swansea Bay University Health Board. As you can imagine, this is causing considerable tension and legitimate trade union challenge. Finally, on recovery, officers will begin scoping the way to recover, and we will be approaching this in the next months. The detailed work may be commenced around Easter time, subject to the overall context of what I've just described. At that point, Mr. Mayor, I'll stop, and I'm sure I or officers on the call will be happy to take any questions that may arise.
Thank you, Leader. I haven't seen there is an indication coming through now. Councillor Steve Hunt, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Leader, for that comprehensive report on what you know to date. I thank you for that. Just maybe you haven't got a crystal ball anyway, but I'm going to ask the question. When you mentioned fantastic news that the figures are falling on all aspects, that's really pleasing. But when you mentioned on the new strains, I just wondered, one question on that. While they won't know yet, what are they doing to, if they find somebody with the new strains, are they testing the vaccine on them so that they can have an idea how it's going to work? Because you mentioned about preparing. I suppose that if the news goes like the current strain of COVID, then without the certainty of knowing how well the current vaccines would work, we could be in a bit of a situation that nobody would want to find themselves in. And also, the mortality rate and deaths, I believe those figures have gone up. Is that because there was an awful lot of people with the coronavirus, COVID-19, that couldn't be measured until figures or data released? I just want to ask those couple of points, if I may, Leader. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hunt. I'm no medical expert by any means, and some of the questions that you've asked there, I may get further information from Public Health Wales. As I understand it, though, I think we need to understand when the variant was detected. It was detected just before Christmas, but when they backtraced the variant, and this is the Kent variant, they actually established that it had been in existence since the September time. As far as the Kent variant is concerned, they do not believe that that has any adverse effect on the vaccine, but they are still undertaking tests as far as that is concerned. They do, however, have concerns in relation to the Brazilian and South African variant that they may have issues where, in the terminology, it blunts the effect of the vaccine. There is still a lot of work ongoing in relation to that. So I haven't got more of a clearer picture than what I'm alluding to at the moment. I don't want to cause any alarm. The facts and figures, the death rates are compared to the death rates in a normal year and what they're now experiencing on the higher raised levels of death rates, particularly when they can identify it, that anyone that dies within contracting COVID within that 28-day period is put down as a COVID statistic. The Kent variant has got a slightly higher increase on the death rate, as I said, from 10 in 1,000 to 13, up to 13 in 1,000. If you look at that comparison, then you're talking of that 3 people in that 1,000 figure. It's still early days as far as these variants are concerned, and I noticed today, talking about mitigating against the variants, that the Scottish Government has actually called on the UK Government to enforce even tighter restrictions on international travel. And they have actually, and I use the term threatened, that if the UK Government doesn't act unilaterally in the UK, the Scottish Government are going to impose further restrictions for people flying into their relevant airports in order to make sure that the variant doesn't spread and is imported into those parts of Scotland. So I can ask the questions on your behalf to Public Health Wales. Myself and the Chief Exec meet with them twice weekly. If you would like to formally send an email to me and the Chief Exec, we will raise it at our meeting, which is next Monday with them. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Purcell, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that very detailed update. In amongst what you've told us, there was something I just wanted to clarify. Obviously, all of us who are parents, grandparents, have children who are going through school, or who have relatives who are teachers, we are just in this absolute dilemma of, do they go back to school or do they not go back to school? However, in the short term, we need to make sure that every child is able to access the learning that they require. And I just wanted clarification. I think you said that every child that needed a Chromebook, I think that's what they call them, in order to continue their studies, has been given one. I'm not absolutely sure whether that is the case. I'm particularly concerned about Year 11 pupils who are going to be assessed on work, that some of them may not be able to actually be completing that work if they haven't got access to that equipment. So I just wondered, can you clarify, perhaps a Cabinet Member for Education or yourself, have we provided every child that needs access to this equipment with the equipment that they need? Thanks.
Yeah, I will call the Director of Education in, but what I said was we are delivering one-to-one devices for those in Key Stage 3 through to Key Stage 5. We have placed on order 4,500 pieces of IT equipment. They're not all Chromebooks. There's a variety of those. We are fishing in a very shallow pond. We haven't had a full supply of that order, but as soon as those orders are coming in, we are ensuring that the areas of years 11 and years 13 are being prioritised in relation to the delivery of those. We are in very confident mood that all children in secondary education will receive the one-to-one, coming down in priorities from years 13 down to years 7, and then we will then move into the ratio of the primary schools, where depending on that school, it'll either be 1 to 2 or 1 to 3. I noticed that the Cabinet members got their hand raised and Aled, so I'll defer, Mr. Mayor, to yourself.
Thank you, Leader. The Director of Education is that the Director of Education, please?
Thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. The leader is absolutely spot on accurate in what he has said. We are delivering this week the devices, the one-to-one devices that will provide every child in a secondary setting with that device. I know that there has been, as the leader indicated, a delay earlier this month, but our understanding is that those deliveries are happening, and these are over and above the devices that we delivered in the first lockdown, and those were delivered to pupils where they were not able to buy a device of their own. That was risk assessed, and we provided those during the first wave of the lockdown as well. So just to confirm exactly what the leader indicated was totally accurate.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Purcell, would you like to come back?
Oh, thank you. I'd just be very pleased to see that these have been issued. Particularly, I'm getting reports of schools where perhaps there are 5 members, 5 children within one family. Mum and dad are both working at home. There's some real struggles going on out there. So the sooner we can sort this out, the better. But I hear what you're saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Purcell. Councillor Rebecca Phillips, please. Councillor Phillips.
Diolch. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, following on from Councillor Purcell's question, in terms of home learning, there are major problems in my ward, and I'm sure many others, in terms of broadband connection. Have we as a council had any conversations with internet providers regarding this problem?
Honest answer, Mr. Mayor, I can't answer that, but I noticed that the director has again raised his hands. Perhaps he has further information.
Thank you, Leader. Director of Education, please.
What we have done in these circumstances is to provide what's called a MiFi dongle, which allows for connectivity onto the web. Now, I'm not exactly sure the what the technical aspects of that would be in certain areas where the coverage is particularly weak. I can look into that, but we haven't had any significant reports of where pupils are not able to access the work being provided by schools. And again, if there are specific issues that Councillor Phillips and Councillor Purcell wish to draw to our attention, I would be more than happy to take that on their behalf.
Thank you, Director. Can I call upon the Cabinet Member for Education, Councillor Peter Rees, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to confirm what the Director is saying, I understand that if there are difficulties, that parents can go to the schools and speak to the schools about connectivity, etc. So my advice would be, if there are difficulties, for those parents to contact the head teacher of the school, and I'm sure that they will be set out. But as the leader has said, and as Alan has said, we are doing everything we can to make sure that our children are getting off online learning. So, I just wanted to emphasise that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Cabinet Member. Councillor Del Morgan, please.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I just wanted to say I've had conversations with education officers in the recent couple of weeks, and they've explained to me the MiFi solution is based on picking up local mobile phone signals rather than broadband, where the broadband is weak. There does remain an issue in some areas where the mobile phone signal is weak as well, but at least that will cover most areas, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. I haven't received any further indications. We are still on agenda item 12, so I'm now going to ask the leader to proceed with his report on part 2, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a final point before I move to skewing is that British Telecom, Openreach, call it what you like, did announce last week that Neath has been selected for the 5G rollout and I'm sure that that is going to improve connectivity going forward, and I'm sure that with a successful rollout by that organisation, we will see better connectivity in order to help us as long as we continue with blended learning. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moving to then the Skewing flooding, which has made the headlines on the front page of the Evening Post since last Thursday. Again, just to put it into context for those who may not be aware, just after lunch around 12:30 on Thursday, January the 21st, reports were received of significant flooding in and around the Gosham Park area of Skewing. An emergency response was mobilised, but initially the full extent of the incident was unclear. At around 3 p.m, a major incident was declared by Mid and West Wales Fire and Rescue Service, and a strategic coordinating group was convened later that afternoon that was chaired by South Wales Police. The extent of flooding was so significant, some 80 homes were initially evacuated. By 9 o'clock, it was thought that the immediate threat to life had been contained. However, a deep depression was subsequently noticed at the junction of Drummer Road and Gosham Park, and a decision was taken at that time of night to evacuate a further 30 homes on a precautionary basis. The cause of the flooding is now confirmed as a blowout from a disused mine workings in the area, caused by some form of blockage in the system underground that had been draining the mine water for many years. The Coal Authority are leading the investigation into the cause of the incident and will also be the leading on the works that will be needed to stabilise the site in the immediate future, and then determine the long-term solution for dealing with the mine water. The immediate response was that agencies have worked together well to protect life and property in the area, and the council's drainage and street care scene teams have done an exceptional job in installing temporary drainage, with its channeling the water still spilling out from the blowout point into our drainage system. They have also acted quickly to clear up and clean our highways and other assets in the affected area, and we have had very positive comments from the way in which the council has responded from partner agencies and residents alike. Social Services mobilised the rest centre on the day of the incident at Court Herbert and dealt with over 80 residents initially. All residents will be able to secure accommodation for the Thursday and Friday nights with friends or families, neighbours, or in fact local hotels that we asked to open up. Rest Centre staff have also worked with the Salvation Army to distribute food and clothing parcels to those affected, and there has been a tremendous response from local people and businesses, with the Salvation Army and the local area coordinator playing a key role in coordinating these actions. When the extent of the situation became clear, a decision was taken to set up a residents' information centre at Abbey Primary School, and over 60 residents to date have visited the centre over Saturday and Sunday. The role of the centre will be extended this week to include a wider range of agencies who can support the recovery process. The corporate communications team has acted quickly to set up an advice line, dedicated website pages, and to facilitate social media and broadcast media activities. And we have also facilitated a visit to the site by the First Minister. We have in fact been complimented on the way that this has been actioned by a major news outlet. Moving into the recovery phase, because the Gold Command still rests and is active as a response, but we are now moving into the recovery phase. So whilst the immediate response was led by Blue Light Services, it is now for the council to lead on the process of the recovery. The multi-agency recovery group has met earlier today, identified immediate priorities for the recovery group, and they are to agree a plan with the Coal Board to enable the ongoing investigations at Gosham Park to continue, and how the interests of affected residents will be catered for. To develop a detailed picture of how properties, infrastructure and residents have been affected in the wider area, and to establish a plan of support in the recovery process. Identify the financial support that will be available to residents, businesses and the council. to work with partner agencies to ensure that there is an effective communication and engagement with those directly and indirectly affected by the incident. This is ensuring that residents have a strong voice within these arrangements, and the local members will be consulted and engaged with us. Work with the Coal Authority to facilitate the implementation of an effective long-term solution to the drainage of the mine water, and to identify any further short or medium-term risks as a result of this incident and mitigating actions relating to those risks. It is likely that residents will feel the impact of this incident for many months to come, not just in the term of the physical impact on their properties, but also in the terms of the psychological impact that often accompanies such incidents. It's important to note that for the Coal Authority to lead the ongoing investigation of the cause of this incident and for them to identify suitable solutions for the failure of the mine workings associated with the drainage structure. The Council will, of course, wish to facilitate the work to ensure interests of residents are supported going forward. It is apparent at this very early stage that costs will be significant. Early discussions will take place with Welsh and UK governments to secure additional funding to meet the costs that will accrue from this incident for the Council and for the residents themselves. The latest update with regard to Goshen Park is that the Coal Authority have established a call line to begin discussions with residents about the way in which the incident is likely to affect them. That call line was operational at 9 AM this morning. Because of the remediation works needed at the site, some of the residents will be affected for some time. Sunnyland residents, Sunnyland Crescent, the Coal Authority is in dialogue with the Council about the way in which the temporary drainage that we have put in place could be rerouted, which would then enable the residents to access their properties at that location. The other residents in the wider area, agencies are establishing processes to ensure that residents have been affected by the flooding are safely returned to their properties. But it is essential that electricity and gas supplies and services are checked before residents reoccupy, and we expect this to take place over the coming days. The Council is opening an online system to make payments on behalf of Welsh Government to residents that are affected. We will be making payments of £500 for those insured and £1,000 to those not insured as people provide their payment details. We are also activating the Council's tax exemption scheme for all those properties that will be affected immediately. The Council has already extensively cleaned and cleared the highways and inspected the Council's assets. We will be deploying waste disposal vehicles over the coming days and also providing public health advice through our Environmental Health Service. This will be initially at the Residents Information Centre, but then it will be extended to a door-to-door service. I'd like to finish, Mr. Mayor, by saying that I cannot praise our staff high enough in relation to the way that they not only reacted to this crisis, which is devastating members of this community. I have been to the site several times, accompanying the First Minister and then with our officers. Our staff were asked for volunteers. We know, as I've said to you all, about expectations of officers and members in COVID. We are dealing with a major incident here and still dealing with COVID. So a shout went up and said, anyone that can off duty can put their name forward, volunteer, we'd be very grateful. And we had two sides of an A4 sheet full of our staff volunteering to help people in need at a time of crisis. This is what this council does. People do not understand what a council does until they need the council. We are all aware of the fact that it's always the council's fault. But in these times, when the council steps up to the plate and is complimented by the other agencies involved in this incident on how effective, how efficient, and even our staff were so sympathetic to the people in this community. I take my hat off to the professionalism of the officers that managed the incident. I take my hat off to the staff that got their feet wet in dealing with the incident and continue to turn up day to day. The wider areas of our community, a Give Me page funding that has already got several £1,000s. The Salvation Army halls full of donations. Even when I went to get my local newspaper, my exercise, by the way, not essential travel, people in that shop asking me, can I help? Can I donate? This is in Talbot. The wider community of Neath Talbot's been affected, and we've all come together to make sure that this community gets back on its feet as soon as possible. As the initial shock wanes, people will become angry, people will want to look to blame someone. We will deal with our communities as best we can. This isn't about blame, this isn't about pointing fingers, this is about getting people back on their feet as quickly as we can, but as safely as we can. And I can assure every member in council that we as an authority are working very closely with the lead authority, the call authority, in them undertaking their investigations to get to the bottom of this, to deal with the problem that we have, to find the resolutions that we need going forward. I am really proud of this council. I am really proud of our workforce, from the chief executive down. Talk about a baptism of fire in her first 3 weeks of office. Well, this was certainly a baptism of water. Mr. Mayor, I'm now happy to take any questions. I can see several hands raised, and if I can't answer, I'm sure the chief exec will.
Thank you, Leader. We've got a number of indications. So first of all, I'm going to call upon Councillor Alan Llewellyn, then to be followed by Councillor Steve Hunt. So Councillor Alan Llewellyn, please.
Diolch, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the Leader of the Council for that very comprehensive report. And I'm sure that we all share the condolences to the residents affected and support the thanks given to Council staff and officers, the volunteers and other emergency services. I know that Councillor Mike Harvey, the local member, isn't present this afternoon for the understandable reasons. But I'm sure that we all express our support to Mike and to other local members for everything they've done to support their constituents. And as a Neath Talbot member of the Fire and Rescue Service, I've also expressed thanks to the fire teams for their work over the last days and weeks at Sgwen. As Councillor Rob Jones said, the call authority will be leading the investigation and technical responses, but as a general comment, we see again that we haven't been able to escape the legacy and shadow of the coal era. I know that from the effect of flooded coal levels in my own area, and we've seen recently tip slides in Rhondda Cynon and now during the last week this awful situation in Sgwen. And I think that with the deterioration of underground infrastructures and climate change affecting bad weather, local authorities will need support from both Welsh Government and UK Government, because the coal industry enriched the whole of the UK with little profit to us as a community historically. But we'll need their support to respond to the huge challenges of the legacy of the coal era, and I'm sure we'll all join in all efforts to ensure that we and the communities affected get the resources that are needed to respond to this dreadful situation. Thank you.
Can I come back on that, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Leader.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Llewellyn. And you're right about Councillor Harvey. He has been getting his feet wet on a regular basis. I did have concern because I know he can't swim, so I didn't want him going into the water too much, but I have spoken to him about that. But on the serious note of the coal authority, what we have to remember here is the legacy that we have inherited under our ground that stems back to 1984 and then the John Major era, when the closure of the National Coal Board led to the coal authority. This was all done before devolution, and therefore the coal authority is the sole domain of the UK government. I do know that the local constituency politicians have written to the Minister responsible for that, outlining the issues that we've currently got. But you're right, coaling is endemic right throughout the whole of South Wales. I'm led to believe that these particular mines may in fact be over 200 years old. And of course, the older the mine workings, the less likelihood we've got accurate pictures in relation to their exact locations. I don't disagree with what he says in relation to the legacy that we now hold, but unfortunately, without it being a Welsh Government matter, although I've spoken to Welsh Government over this and we continue to engage with Welsh Government, the responsibility for the Coal Authority rests solely with UK Government, and I've pinned my signature to a letter that's been sent by Stephen King MP expressing concern of this legacy, maintenance and financial detriments to this authority and to the wider community.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Steve Hunt to be followed by Councillor Anthony John Richards. Councillor Steve Hunt, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to repeat Councillor Llewellyn's or Councillor Rob Jones's comments. I mean, I fully support all the comments they both have made. But I would just like to add that I'm not surprised. You know, some people might get surprised of how this authority works. And I just want to put it on record, Mr. Mayor, that we must remember that this authority does in the best possible way at all times. And if we only look at, I'm sure he mentioned Karen Jones as a baptism of water. I'm sure the leader, since he's taken over his own personal role as a baptism of landslides, earthquakes, water, gas. So I wanted to explain that Sem Sisters had a gas explosion. The same response happened up there in my own ward. Yslyfera, where Alan Llewellyn have had the same response. What I'm saying is we are an excellent authority. Our workforce is second to none, in my opinion. We do the things that are done right and properly. So I just not going to repeat Alan's or you as leader, but I just wanted to put it on record, a job well done by all agencies and every single person, too many to name, who have been involved in this. But congratulate yourself and our teams and our officers in the respect of this particular tragic event. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. I can see that Councillor Anthony Richards has withdrawn, so therefore can I invite Councillor Helen Carey Clark, please.
Thank you. I would just like to join in the thanks to the council workers and other agencies that have been in Skewin over the last few days. As a councillor for a neighbouring ward, that obviously part of it is Skewin, I've been so impressed by the work that the council officers have done. In particular, in my, the Lacs, Emma and Christy have been absolutely fabulous in bringing the community together. The community have been so generous, so giving, so wonderful, and the local businesses in feeding the volunteers, in feeding the people who've been affected by it, and by donating all the things that they've given to help the people that have been displaced from their homes. So I just wanted to put it on record, my personal thanks to everybody. And I know that the people of Skewin are very grateful for it. Following on from what Councillor Llewellyn said, though, does the council, is there a mechanism that the Coal Authority have to report to the council about how often they inspect these mines that they have responsibility for? And if not, is this something we could call for in the future to ensure that our surrounding areas are safer for our residents?
Leader, would you like to answer that?
The Coal Authority responds directly to the UK government, and there is a minister that is actually responsible for that. So the accountability will rest with the UK government. As to what they have to and have not provided, I can't answer. I can certainly find out and get back to you in relation to that. I would suspect, although it's a guess, that there may not be a duty to respond. If you think about how many coal mines that we know of, let alone those that we don't know of, then I think it would be such a mammoth task. The Welsh Government grabbed the nettle in relation to the landslides that took place in RCT, and because we'd had landslides in our area previous to that, we actually had commissioned an inspection of all coal tips that we own or are in private ownership in order to feed that into the Welsh Government, because these are coming more and more frequent. But that was a request of the Welsh Government. So my honest answer is I don't know that they've got a duty to report to us for the sheer volume of what they would need to report on, where and how. But at some point, like everything, there's always accountability. And at some point, there will be a review of what has happened here. Could it have been prevented, and what you go do going forward? You know, that water is still coming out of that ground 6 days later. So we already know that the Coal Authority have submitted a draft plan to us, telling us what their intentions are. But to repeat myself, and I do apologise, I can't answer about their accountability, but their bosses are the UK government.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Clark, for your question. I'm now going to call upon the Cabinet Member, Councillor Carol Clement-Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to align myself with all of the comments around the council staff by all the other speakers before me. I consistently said they blow me away, and especially since the beginning of COVID. We mustn't forget that our staff are tired, they have worked extremely hard, and they didn't think twice about putting their hand up and stepping into the breach once again. As I say, they blow me away. People sometimes ask, and especially at this time of year, what does the council do? And a lot of people don't think about things like this. And I think it's really important to say that, you know, even down to the finance staff, you know, they've been issuing grants to people, businesses affected by COVID. There seems to have been another grant every other week. And now they'll be helping to provide these families in the affected area with money from the Welsh Government to help them out. You know, I know the leader mentioned yesterday about somebody saying that they were pleased that the council staff were there, but not just the fact that they were there doing the job. The compassion that they showed to the residents has not gone unnoticed by the residents, and it heartens me to know that we work in such a wonderful authority. Hats off to our leadership and our officers, all our staff, and love to the people affected. I know it's an awful time, but you know, if there is any issues that those people have, they need to get in touch with us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought it important to add my thanks to them.
Thank you, Cabinet Member. Leader of Council, please.
Yeah, final 2 points from me, Mr. Mayor, and perhaps you may wish to ask the Chief Exec if there's anything that she would like to add to this. I think what we've got to bear in mind here is that we're in the middle of the COVID pandemic. To evacuate 80 properties immediately and then a further 30 or 40 properties on top of that, keeping COVID secure, making sure we transport them in an appropriate manner, triaging them when they got to Talbot to make sure that we kept them safe, keeping our staff safe, because when an incident like this occurs, you tend to forget COVID. COVID goes out of the window because the main priority here is to protect lives. And just one final point from me to show the commitment of our staff. 2 of our senior managers lost parents week before COVID and a week before this event and during this event. One lost a mother and one lost a father, and they both turned up on site. They both answered telephone calls. They both responded to emails, and that's the commitment that our staff have. Although they were suffering pain themselves, they did not want to see our community and our members within our community in that pain. and they turned to. I think that in itself shows the strength and the compassion that we've got with our workforce. I think I've said enough on that now, Mr. Mayor, and I'll hand over to the Chief Executive, if that's okay.
Thank you, Leader. Chief Executive, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I will feed back to the staff the comments that members of council have made this afternoon. And as a number of speakers have said, we've got a lot to be proud of in Neath Talbot. I think we are a council that cares about its communities, and at times like this, I think that's there for everybody to see. The agencies have worked very well together in the emergency response phase, Mr. Mayor, but the process of recovery has only just started. And for some of our residents, that process is unfortunately going to extend for very many months. So all I think I want to do this afternoon is to give you an absolute assurance that we will continue to work with our partner agencies and with our communities to support people to get back up and running as quickly as possible. We will see things happening at different phases, and I think making sure that we've got really clear communication with residents around that and with elected members is going to be very important. So there'll be some thought given to how we can do that to the best of our ability in the coming days. So that's all I want to say, Mr. Mayor. The process of recovery has only just started, and unfortunately with this particular incident, it isn't something that we're going to be closing down in a matter of days or a matter of weeks. It is something that's going to extend over very many months, and I'm sure that you'll want me in due course to report back to you on how we're getting on with the work.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Can I also thank Leader of Council for the comprehensive reports that we've had this afternoon on behalf of Council. Members, I haven't received any further indications on the second report from the Leader. Therefore, members, I can confirm that this concludes the business for this afternoon, other than for me to take the opportunity to thank you all for your attendance. So please take care and stay safe. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
you. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank
you.
Bye and stay safe, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.